from over $5,000 silver to $0 silver. How does this happen and the debt clock explode? I'll explain all of this as we explore. Silver. Many of us have been frustrated at its price performance, especially in recent weeks. The silver price bounces around like crazy, and it also bounces around in terms of the ratio of it compared to the money supply. And that's what we're talking about in this video as a part of an ongoing series called The Debt Clock in Silver. We're going to take a look at the debt clock and see exactly what it's doing now. I've had several of members of the community ask me about this, as it has been quite a while since I've done a video on this, because there's been no change in terms of the dollars ratio or the dollar to silver ratio. The dollar to silver ratio is something unique, and it is not a price. And I often have to explain this every time I do a video like this, because some people think, well, you're just mentioning a price of silver in the hundreds or thousands of dollar range, and it's a pipe dream. But that's not what it is. It's not a price when I talk about $0 silver. No, indeed it is not. If we take a look at this thing, if you see on your screen here, we can see that when you highlight this section here, you see an explanation up on top. If you go to the usdebtclock.org websites, it is the year-over-year increase in the M2 money supply divided by the yearly world production of silver in ounces. These sources come from the Federal Reserve and the United States Geological Survey. Now, some people don't fully believe in all the numbers in the debt clock, but nonetheless, there is at least some accuracy in them, and it can be proven by going to these sources. Yearly world production of silver in ounces compared to the money supply. Now, if you look through the playlist, and I'm going to add this video to it on the channel on the gold or the silver, the dollar to silver ratio. I'm so used to saying gold to silver ratio, but we're looking at a ratio between dollar bills printed or digitized compared to the amount of silver ounces. It is an exercise in seeing the dangers of quantitative easing. That means continued printing or digitizing of money that causes inflation, which is what we are seeing now. Well, as you know, the Federal Reserve has taken a step back and they have done quantitative tightening. But what does that look like here? This chart shows you what it looks like. This is from the St. Louis Fed showing economic data, and you can see this is the M2 money supply. And when we look here, we can see how much it's been exploded, especially during the coronavirus pandemic. Many dollars printed, but it has since pulled back. They have stopped printing overall, and they have pulled it back, and now it's coming back down. But as you can see, it's increased a little bit here in recent months, and this is something that is going to probably level out, or pretty much here it was going to come back down. But essentially, overall, there's a net decrease in dollars coming in to the Federal Reserve than going out. In other words, you'll see newly printed dollar bills all the time, but there's more taken in than going out now. But again, if you take a look at the overall picture, there's still a lot of dollars floating out there. There's not, and where are all those dollars at? A lot of them are over in Europe still. Quantitative easing rounds 1 through 3 left a lot of dollars overseas. And they want that to be the case, and they want them to be used over there. That's what's keeping the dollar propped up. It keeps the dollar dominant compared to other currencies around the world. And it is by far the strongest, in spite of the recent de-dollarization that we've seen going on, that has been chipping away a little bit at the dollar's dominance, but still has a long way to go before we see it go down. So notwithstanding, that's what we are seeing here. This is why the ratio is literally at zero. And it's at zero for all of these indicators, because when we highlight this again, you can see that the U.S. M2 money supply is declining year over year, but it's only declining slightly, which means that it could step up again. Now, in the past few months, we have seen the debate about the debt ceiling. And since that has come into play, well, what happened? Something I've never seen before, and that is an announcement at the Treasury Department's website here, saying that the Treasury announces marketable borrowing estimates. Indeed, they have. We're talking it to an excess of $1 trillion within 5 weeks has been borrowed, leaving us now to the debt limit here, the national debt rising to $32.6 trillion. That is $253,686 per taxpayer. And if you divide it out by per citizen, that's almost $100,000 for each citizen of the United States of America. And this seems unsustainable. I mean, we've heard that word sustainable utilized at the World Economic Forum, and that language, that buzz language we're seeing these days with ESG, environmental social governance. We're seeing it with diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, underneath that social aspect of ESG, and sustainability is what it's about. In terms of the environment and everything else, we want sustainability. But this kind of debt and deficit spending seems unsustainable. But that's just it. How sustainable is it? It will be as long as the dollar's strength stays where it is or goes up. But even if it comes down a little bit, they can continue to do this. They can continue to kick the can down the road with bold borrowing limits of $1,000, of $1 trillion rather. Boy, it'd be nice. $1,000 used to be a lot. Now it's pocket change compared to what we're seeing. In fact, as I record this video, you see it climbing up well over $1 million during the time that I record this. By the time I'm finished with this video, it's insane what's happening. What does that mean for silver? Well, this metal will continue to hold value because in terms of its price and value, well, there's differentials there compared to the ratio. But what does that ratio really tell us is that, even though they pull back, the cat is out of the bag, so to speak, with all those dollars floating around. And with inflation, disinflation happening, in other words, inflation is pulling back slightly, there's still a lot of dollars. If those dollars were to come right back into the United States, all bets are off, and we would see massive hyperinflation if the world decided we didn't want these dollars anymore. The bond markets took another turn. What's happening in the bond markets? It's the government buying up those bonds. It's like robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's insane. And so that's what happens. And so silver, though, on the other hand, nothing has changed for silver. I think it's one of those things where as we see that debt clock start to tick up faster and harder, well, you're going to see, silver begin to see higher lows as the price volatility will continue to come into play. But we're talking about silver, instead of pulling back to under $20 an ounce, it may, find another level of support at 22 and what have you through the course of time. If you look at the chart for silver over the past even 10 years, you will see what I'm talking about. There are higher lows that we're seeing, and much more lines of support for silver, where it'd be highly unusual for it to fall below those levels of support. I can't say it won't happen, but anytime we see the national debt do what it's doing here, that's only going to strengthen the case for silver. Sooner or later, something's got to give somewhere, somehow. And that's just it. Those are two different scenarios here on where this is going to play out and how it's going to play out. In other words, there's a lot of people out there predicting absolute economic calamity and collapse. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but we could see and dip into an uncontrolled recession. Does that mean it's going to be massive and deep? Potentially, but it may not be as bad as some fear it would be. But nonetheless, let's see how it plays out. So let's take a look here at the money supply, and you can see here that this number is ticking downward. And so in other words, what's happening is they're printing more money, they're taking in more digitally than they're issuing out. So it's shrinking, but shrinking only slightly. But nonetheless, and what's happening, all these other numbers in the red are very scary things. We have the unfunded liabilities, which are massive here in this country. We're talking to the tune of, what is that, $192 trillion, or is that quadrillion? I don't even know. It's insane. It's massive, massive. But nonetheless, all of these things that are occurring, and wages are not keeping up with inflation, or certainly not keeping up with what we would be owing for each individual, which is why I think it's a good idea to have some money outside of the system itself, the whole system, including banks. Have cash on hand in case of emergencies, locked up in a way in your own safe that's fire protected if possible. Have some cash in there, and also stack precious metals, which includes silver, but also gold, to protect yourself as well too. The ultimate form of savings is silver and gold. But there you go. So there's my report. This is going to be part of a playlist about $0 silver, and we will probably see this for quite some time. But I've had multiple people ask me about this, so I thought I'd do another video on it. Let me know what your thoughts are. I hope this helps put everything into perspective. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for watching, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.